Hey, what's up, guys? This is Jack. I just wanted to make a quick video about how I journal. It's not necessarily for trading, but um, I don't know. I think it's helpful for pretty much all of your life, and I think it's definitely helpful for trading as well. So let's get into it. Trading psychology is the same thing as your everyday psychology. That's my own personal belief. Um, a, a professional trader said that. And ever since I've heard that, I've realized that it's true. There's not really a difference between, your how you are when you're trading versus how you are in your everyday life. For example, if you're like me, you might be speeding on the highway, and it's against the law, it's wrong, but you do it anyways. So when you do that, you're telling yourself mentally, it's okay to break the rules, and I don't have to follow the rules. And just me saying that out loud, hopefully you can realize how much of a problem that's likely going to cause in the rest of your life. If you don't have to follow the rules in this regard, why would you follow the rules in any other regard? And since I've had this kind of realization, I've found a lot of value in driving slower, not only because it's the right thing to do, it's what you should do. When I was younger, I used to speed all over the place, but now I really enjoy driving slower. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but actually there's a lot of enjoyment to be had from driving slower. But it could be anything. It could be like, I know I'm supposed to go to the gym today, but I'm not going to go because I don't feel like it. Or, I have this commitment. I'm supposed to go to this thing, but you know what? I just don't want to go, so I'm not going to go. Or, I'm going to eat a big dessert, and I know I'm not supposed to, but I'm going to do that anyway. All those kinds of things are rules that you have for yourself. And if you're breaking your own rules right there, listen to what I just said. You're probably going to break rules in other areas of your life. If you can't control yourself in your normal everyday life, how can you ever control yourself when you're risking money in the market? It's just logical. It just makes sense. So what you do in your everyday life, I believe, will translate to what you do during the live market. And if you feel bad and stressed, how do you think that's going to impact your trading? Right? And that's something that actually happened to me today. So it's, good that I'm making this video just so I can get some more practice with the journaling strategy. So what do you do about it? Best thing to do is obviously work on yourself. Go to therapy, read books, listen to podcasts, meditate, do yoga, journal, talk with people. All of those things have been super helpful for me. And when things get really heated, and you need something right now to help, to prevent you from doing something that's going to make the situation worse, you can do stuff like running, going to the gym, walking. You can call somebody. You can do breathing exercises. Generally, something physical is the best remedy for needing something immediately, I've found. And I would recommend you just look online for resources to figure out what's best for you. Journaling in particular has helped me a lot. And, in particular, it allows me to vent, but not ruminate. I'm getting out what's going on, but I'm not like stuck on it. And I can get descriptive about what's going on, but not really get hung up on it, and it helps me take a step back to look at the whole picture with more clarity. And I always feel better, at least a little bit, after I do a journal entry, and a lot of times I feel a lot better. So that's why I recommend it. Pen and paper, not a keyboard. So journaling by hand is shown to have a much more effective effect than doing, writing or journaling with a keyboard at your computer. You can Google that. That's common knowledge. So I say to write by hand. There's a lot of good benefits from doing it by hand. I recommend buying a journal that looks visually appealing. That way, you enjoy using it, because if you don't like how it looks or how it feels, odds are you're probably not going to use it that much. If it's got, the wrong, paper style in it, you don't like it, you're probably not going to use it that much. So make sure you like the journal, and that way you want to keep it around and you want to actually use it. it takes longer to write by hand, so that gives your body and your mind a chance to slow things down as you're journaling and processing everything. And I also recommend getting this app. It's called How We Feel, and it's really great. It's just as simple as it looks here, the picture on the bottom right. You open up the app and you can choose what type of energy you're feeling, high energy, unpleasant or pleasant, and low energy, pleasant or unpleasant. And then there's a whole bunch of descriptive emotions with definitions that you can choose from, and you can kind of log how you're feeling, where you are, who you're with, what you're doing, and just log it. You can take a note, and then you can look back later and say, oh yeah, last week I was really feeling down, but I was feeling great this weekend, or whatever. And it's really helpful because if you have a bigger emotional vocabulary and you track how you feel and where you are, what you're doing, all that stuff, you're going to enhance your perspective, and you're going to connect to yourself on a deeper level. So I definitely recommend journaling by hand, a journal that you actually like, and getting the app called How We Feel to have access quickly to a lot of words that are very descriptive, so that you can really nail down how you feel emotionally, what's going on inside you. My journaling process, I learned how to journal from my therapist, and this is just one way to do it. It's called the ABC journaling method. And mine's a little bit different. I've added some stuff in there that is not in the standard ABC method. And it's not just for negative experiences either. It can be helpful for positive experiences too. But what I do is I always write the date, because I've learned that it's helpful to look back on old entries and remember what was going on and how you felt in all of the entry, because when you do that reflection later, it's a greater enhancement of that connection to yourself. And you actually grow the distance between your observations and what you're feeling as well. So you can kind of train yourself to observe what's going on rather than be stuck in it over time. So my version has 8 or 9 parts. Basically, the first thing you write is the situation. Just briefly explain what's going on, what happened. And then I write thoughts and cognitions. So basically the same thing, but cognitions in particular, there's a list that I like to refer to. It's called the greatest hits list of negative and positive cognitions. And you can just Google that. It should be the top result by the Institute for Creative Mindfulness. And they have a list of, the greatest hits. It's kind of funny, the title greatest hits, because when you read the list, I have it right here. Let me grab it. I've got it in this presentation too. You'll see it. But, for example, some negative cognitions would be like, I should have known better, or I am to blame, or I am in danger, or I'm not in control. These are kind of stereotypical things that we tell ourselves that may or may not actually be true. So that's what I do for that part. And we're going to go through an exercise here, an example, so you can see exactly what I do, and you can give it a shot. And then next I write what emotions are coming up for me. And I try to be as descriptive as I can. I write maybe 5 or 6 of them down. And then physical, what physical sensations do I notice in my body? And you can also draw them too. I don't like to draw. It doesn't really help me much, but I can definitely, meditate a little bit and feel what's going on in my body and describe that just in like a few words. And then behavior. When this situation is happening, these thoughts, these emotions, the physical sensations, when all that's taking place, what behavior is typically the outcome? And, just briefly describe that, biases, cognitive biases specifically. What cognitive distortions do you think are coloring your perspective? And if you want a list of cognitive distortions, I think it's very helpful to have this list. Again, just Google it and then look for the one that comes up by therapistaid.com. I have my own list, and I'll show you what I use here in just a second. And then the last thing I write, sometimes I write something after this, but the final thing is the truth. I call it truth. This is my made up part. I just made it up for myself and added it in here because I think it ties everything together great. You just analyzed the situation, your thoughts, your emotions, what's going on in your body, what behavior it leads you to, and what kind of distortions might be happening to you that is causing all of this stuff. So what now that you have all of that understanding written down by hand, what kind of truth can you come up with right now with all that in mind? You have a clearer picture. Now, what's a more balanced perspective or a more balanced assessment of what's going on and what you want to do with this situation? So here's the list of greatest hits. I think it's so funny to call it the greatest hits list because we all have that. I should have known better. I'm to blame. I can't succeed. I'm stupid. I'm alone. I'm trapped. I'm not in control. I can't trust myself. I can't trust anybody. Positive cognitions too. This exercise is good for positive experiences and negative experiences. It's very, very useful for these negative experiences, obviously, because anybody can handle a positive experience usually. It's helpful to journal about those too. But yeah, this list is super helpful. And then the cognitive biases list. This is my own personal list, but you can find the same thing out there. Mind reading. I don't have the definitions here, but you can kind of guess what they mean. Fortune telling, catastrophizing, labeling, specifically negative labeling, discounting the positives, overgeneralization, shoulds, blaming, comparisons, what if, emotional reasoning, etc. All right, so here's an example journal entry that's relevant for me today. It's the 6th, and this is my ABC entry. This is exactly what I would do, but I would do it by hand. I'm just showing you this so it's nice and clean. You don't want to read my handwriting. So the situation is I traded today, and I made a lot of mistakes I normally wouldn't have made. And I didn't follow my rules because my mind and my judgment was clouded by stress from this weekend and this morning. So what kind of thoughts and cognitions was I having? Or what am I having? And some of those were, I should have known better. I did something wrong. I can't trust myself, can't succeed. I'm a failure, right? We've all had those kinds of thoughts before. Emotions. What type of emotions do I feel? Well, I feel apprehensive. I feel troubled, overwhelmed, uneasy, and pressured. And notice in my list of emotions, I'm not saying I feel sad or I feel anxious or depressed or whatever basic emotion. I'm using words that have a little bit more, I guess meat to it, a little bit more meaning. It's a little bit deeper beyond just I feel anxious. Well, it's not that I just feel anxious. I feel troubled. I feel like there's something going on that, needs resolved or is troubling me. I feel overwhelmed. I feel not just, anxious, but I feel like, there's too much going on. And I feel like it's overwhelming. I feel uneasy. It's not that I feel depressed or whatever. I feel like things aren't good for this reason or whatever. I feel pressured. I'm pressuring myself to perform. So I think that app, that How We Feel app, is really helpful for getting a little bit more clarity about how we actually feel. Physical, flighty, tingling in my arms and legs, alert, adrenaline. Those are all kind of similar things, but different ways to describe it, I guess. Behavior, this naturally leads to impulsive decisions or avoidance. Or maybe I'll just get busy with starting a task. And usually I'll take a break and do something different, Biases, fortune telling for sure. Up here, my cognitions, it says I'm a failure. That's fortune telling, or catastrophizing. Negative labeling, I did something wrong. I can't trust myself. I should have known better. That's negative labeling. Discounting the positives, negative filtering, personalizing everything, blaming maybe, emotional reasoning for sure. All right, so now that I have all that written down, now that I've thought about all that, I've felt into my body what's going on. What is my truth about it all? Now that I have this more balanced perspective, I've kind of put some distance between the situation and my true self. So what do I see now? And the truth for me is I had a difficult day yesterday and this morning, and I knew I shouldn't have traded in that mindset because I know what that feels like, and I know what the outcome usually is. It's not good. So in the future, I will not trade in that mindset, and I know I can recognize when I'm not mentally available for trading, and I will accept that I'm losing a day of trading because of it. I also know that I'm a good trader. I'm not a failure, and my performance is good overall. So one bad day doesn't make me a failure. It gives me another opportunity to learn. Plus, I can make a rule and decide to accept that rule, and that will prevent another bad day like this from happening in the future. And that's a pretty balanced perspective. I don't feel the same way that I did at the beginning of this entry, and all of this brings me a lot of clarity about what's going on, in a pretty holistic, perspective. So anyway, that's my strategy for journaling. I hope that's helpful. And if you like this video, let me know. And if you want to see anything else, just let me know. And hope you're doing well. And take care. Thanks for watching.